Hello, hello, hello. Here we are, back again at a motivational Monday after a very long, unexpected, unannounced break. And what can I say? When depression grabs a hold, it really, really holds on and refuses to let go. I'm surrounded by ambient noise. This is my third time trying to record it, and each time I try to record, the ambient noises get worse. Should I be investing in like a soundproof room? Sure. Where would I find the funds to do such a thing? I have no idea. If anyone knows where I can sell pictures of my feet online, that would be great. Any ideas on some passive income, a side hustle that's not going to take too much time and energy? That would be great. Because I just like to move in general. I mean, this area is getting sketchier and sketchier as the days go by. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to finally begin the People Pleaser series. And we're going to start it light. Well, I don't know how light it is really, but I want to start off with just like a basic sort of foundation that we will then build on, right? In the coming series, where I'll talk about different examples in which this people pleaserness or this having this foundation period, how it branches off into other areas of your life where it doesn't always look like stereotypical people pleaserness, but in essence it's all coming from the same tree. You get what I mean? Branches of the same tree. So let's get into it. We'll keep it, short or as short as possible without doing a disservice to the message that I'd like to share. But yeah, let's sit back, relax, and get into today's episode. Okay, so let me set a scene for you. You are 5 years old, maybe even 6, and you are raised by parents who aren't emotionally available for you, right? They don't really know how to meet your emotional needs and instead use you as a vessel to process their own emotional needs. So if something happens, you're responsible for their emotions, and you find yourself playing this game where you try to figure out how to find yourself in a position where you don't trigger them off, right? Because anything can trigger them at any time. So you don't trigger them, and that way you can keep the peace and stability that you need in your life, right? That for whatever reason, unintentionally and unconsciously, the onus is on you to maintain the stability in the house. Yeah? Or let's say you are, 13 years old and you've suddenly become your mom's bestie. Let's say you're raised by a single parent. So your mom has stopped treating you like a child, like for years now. And the two of you are basically, besties, equals in a way, right? She talks to you about her troubles, the things that stress her out, and the two of you work like a team to, sort out any sort of issues in your environment and issues that she might have. You don't really spend that much time talking about yourself, and you're actually her therapist in a way. For you, it makes you feel mature and you feel honored to be at the big kids table, the adults table. But quietly in the back of your mind, your emotional needs are being neglected. You are being parentified in the way that you actually have to tend to your own needs by yourself. And on top of that, mother and care for the emotional needs of your parent. Now, in these two scenarios, your emotional needs are not being met. Yeah? And in order to survive your environment, you have to find yourself keenly attuned to your parents' emotional needs, or whatever their needs are actually, to avoid any sort of emotional outburst or to avoid what you perceive to be danger in the space, right? Now, on a mental level, developmentally, right, when you're a child, you have no processes for reasoning in terms of, okay, cool, this person is supposed to take care of me. They are not taking care of me. And it could be that there's something wrong with them and they're just incapable. Could be B, there's something wrong with me that is making it difficult for them. Or C, there's a third unknown factor that's involved here, something that's getting in the way of me receiving these needs, right? Or something getting in the way of them giving me these needs, right? So when you're really young, 5 years old, 6 years old, or even younger, when you're an infant, in your mind, you're working off of the assumption that this is my caregiver, this is the person who's meant to care for my needs. So when your needs are not being met, you process it as there's clearly something wrong with me with having this need, right? That I shouldn't be having this need in the first place. There's something wrong with me for wanting this, right? Because it's clearly not available here. So I have not evolved to adapt to this environment. Does that make sense? Or you won't necessarily say that there's something wrong with you for having the need in the first place, right? But that there's something wrong with you that is making your caregiver withhold this thing from you, right? That there's something that you're not doing in this reciprocal situation that is, hindering you from accessing this thing that you need, right? Be it affection, be it attention, care, whatever, right? So you internalize these things deeply. Imagine you're a baby and a basic need is not being met. Babies need to be touched and hugged. They need that physical affection. If children don't get physical affection, they grow up to be lacking, right? Emotionally and physically, and they don't have a tolerance for care. Their body has no memory for care, and therefore they find themselves not being able to relate to the environment around them in a tactile way. They might be overly tactile, right, and overstimulate themselves, almost like how one would binge after starving themselves, for the whole day. Or they, would recoil and be highly sensitive to touch because it is so foreign and unfamiliar that their body hasn't sort of been desensitized to even the most mundane touches that most children become accustomed to very early on in life, right? So these are like little things where if something is missing in your fundamental years, it's not necessarily something that just goes away as you get older, but in fact, the wound just gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you grow, right? And it almost seems as if that the whole something that might have just been a little pinprick when you were a baby, right, has now exponentially grown to the point where it's almost consumed half of your body, right? Half of your being. This hole is like the hole in the ozone layer, and it's gaping. It's a gaping wound that is now bleeding on everything, everywhere. Now, what does it mean to not have a parent who cares for your emotional needs or your basic needs, right? And then on top of that, having a parent who is maybe sometimes volatile, is that from a very early age, you learn that you are not inherently entitled to care, that you are not inherently entitled to peace, security, affection, that these are not things that, you can just receive, passively. Firstly from your caregivers, but your relationship with your caregivers informs you about, the rest of the world and what to expect from the world. So therefore, you don't really expect it from other people as well. And if you are someone who is seeking security and care and affection and all these other things, then it requires you to do something, right? And your parents don't go around telling you what they need. You eventually pick it up, right? You figure it out. Some of their needs, some of their requests are obvious and are stated, whereas others you kind of learn by doing, and you observe and you see that, like, actually, don't make a noise, don't be noticed, don't, and this is what happens. And it's a long and painful process of trial and error. So when you then get older and you're out here calling yourself an empath because you have a sense for other people's feelings, that really you're not an empath, and that you were just raised to be finely attuned to other people's emotions in order for you to be able to survive your interactions with them by knowing, where they are emotionally. You know what cards to play in order to make sure that they can give you what you need from that interaction. And to make sure that you don't make things worse, right? That you can also survive the interaction and go away. Live to tell the tale, right? And that's how you learn to survive with your caregivers. So this is the game that you then play with everyone else, because this is fundamentally where or what you understand the world to be, right? And it's almost as if, because these things happen at such a fundamental age in one's life, that this is what informs almost like your reptilian brain. This is the knee-jerk reaction part of yourself that does things without even thinking. You're not even aware of yourself doing it. It just sort of happens, which is why you then call yourself an empath, because you're not even aware of the thought process that happens that causes you to tune into certain people's emotions. Do you get what I mean? So you're just like, I don't know, it just comes naturally. No, it didn't come naturally. In fact, it came from many years of conditioning, many years of trial and error, many years of living in fear, many years of being starved of your basic needs. That this skill, this talent, this thing that you're calling natural, is actually something that you acquired through blood, sweat, and tears. But it happened such a long time ago and at such a fundamental point in your life that at this point it is so deeply woven into your DNA that you might as well call it a natural skill. Now, this obviously plays out in many, many ways, and we'll come back to the point of, playing out your childhood with different people. That's definitely coming up down the line. But the foundation that I just want to set here is that there are many other things, right, that we say are just natural. And I'm using these two examples of being the parentified child and being the emotionally neglected child as examples of how you say that you're just a naturally caring person, you're naturally a mother hen type vibe, when again that's not the case. You were just parentified as a child, and now you don't know how to have healthy relationships with people. You don't know how to equally contribute, to just sit in the silence and wait for someone to reach you, to meet you halfway, right? That you're so used to being the one reaching out, taking care of everything, taking off someone's mental load and doing all the labor in the relationship. And it could come from various angles, right? Same thing with being a people pleaser. But from this instance, I'm just using being the parentified child as an example, where now, because this was your relationship with your mother, that your mother may, oh, not your mother, oh, let me not shit on moms, but this was your relationship with your guardian, your caregiver. They made you believe that it was your job to take care of them, right? That it's your job to take care of the people around you. That you cannot just be in a space and be cared for, that your needs don't matter, right? That everybody else's needs matter more than your own. So you never really taught how to take care of yourself and how to prioritize yourself because you've never been given the room to do so, right? And you've never really seen it be portrayed in a healthy way, right? Where someone sets a boundary not in the name of denying someone else their need, but in the name of honoring their own needs first. Instead, you're raised by a greedy individual who is gluttonous in their demand of other people's time, attention, and care. Anyway, specifically their own children, because they feel entitled to it, right? That you owe them because they gave you life. Mind you, a life you didn't particularly ask for. But still, that's the guilt that is hanging over your head every time, that's thrown in your face when you resist. So, yeah, you found yourself in that paradigm, and now that you're older, you just find yourself recreating your childhood, even in the most minute and minor interactions. That your knee-jerk reaction is to play this role, to recreate these roles, to put people in those positions where someone who doesn't even want to be, someone who's just taking, but you don't even give them room to give to you, right? That you bombard them with so much care and affection that you stunt their ability to be a giver, and that you could be creating takers instead of meeting people who are just takers, right? And we definitely meet people who will suck you dry, right? And even chew on your bones. But there are definitely times where you're also meeting people who are giving and generous, but you never allow them to show up as themselves with you, right? Because you don't know what it's like to receive. Yeah? In the same way where you're always worried about other people's feelings and you're so finely attuned to everyone else's emotions and what they need, and you give great advice, but you're always the last one to find out what's going on with you. That you don't know how to be as finely attuned with your own internal environment. You don't know how you feel and what you're going through, and depression just sneaks up and grabs you like a thief in the night because you're not even aware of the little ways that your mind and your body have been screaming for care and attention, because you don't even know what their voices sound like anymore, because you learned to drown that out a very long time ago, because the needs of your parents, the need to survive, was louder. And you kept telling yourself that, well, I'll sort myself out later. I'll sort myself out later. I'll sort myself out later. And later never came. Because tomorrow never comes. And there you are, the 4-year-old, 5-year-old version of yourself, still sitting in the corner, patiently waiting for you to finish caring for the whole world and to finally come back and care for yourself. So yeah, I'm just going to leave that there because I, as promised, do not want to go too deep into it. But like I said, I'm setting a foundation here, right? So we'll keep calling back to this. But I think it is important that we think about our childhoods with compassion, right? We think about the people that we've become as a result of our childhoods with grace. Yeah. And that hopefully everyone is going to therapy or some sort of counseling, or is in a space where they can process their emotions. They can journal, do whatever, and really uncover, things about your childhood that maybe weren't right. And sometimes that's hard to admit, right? Because by acknowledging and admitting that certain things about your childhood were not okay, you will also have to admit that maybe your parents did you wrong, they did you dirty, that they failed to parent you adequately, that your parents could not meet your needs. And that in some instances, depending on what your childhood was like, that your parents were abusive. And that's hard sometimes to admit because you love them dearly and you don't want to be calling them abusers. And I'm not saying that you should. If something happened and it was abuse and you want to address it, then by all means, go for it. However, I would also say that it is important for you to process, everything that has happened to you. Seek counseling before going in gung ho and saying, yeah, fire and brimstone, I'm going to sort this out. Really look into yourself, right? Look into yourself and get the help that you need to process your childhood before, slaying dragons and stuff. Making sure that you are in a safe environment and that you have care and you have a network of care to support you as you tackle this very big thing. If you're not interested in really, going after your parents, that maybe from their perspective, now that you're older, you can understand how they've fallen short, and maybe you yourself are a parent and you live in fear of becoming like your parents, right? Having grace for them might also allow you to have grace for yourself, that they were not perfect, that maybe in their own way they were trying their best, and that they did not have the tools or the forethought or even, the wherewithal to consider the impact of their actions, and that you yourself as a parent, in every attempt and every effort to be the best parent, you don't know what the long-term impact of your decisions will be, right? And all you can really do is just try your best. So as you go back and look at your life, look at your childhood, look at everything that you've been through, try to see how you are recreating that experience in your day-to-day life. And that's the homework for this week, to just look at yourself, look at your interactions with the people around you, your relationships, especially the ones closest to you, but even just your random interactions with strangers. What are you doing in those interactions that are remnants of your childhood? Because I can bet you cash dollars that parts of your childhood come up in almost every interaction you have with people, even if it is in the smallest ways. That there's something about those dynamics, the people that you find yourself drawn to, or how you perform in those situations, the intonations in your voice. I notice a change in my voice depending on the power dynamics of the people I'm interacting with. And it's not something that I figured out how to change, because I only ever hear it once I'm already deep in the conversation. And by then it's too late. Like, who's going to want to talk to someone who at some point was like high pitched and nasally, next minute it's dropped and there's bass, and like, what the fuck's going on here? Do you get what I mean? But it's, in me noticing it now, the work is for me to figure out why I feel the need to perform in certain ways with different people. And that if I work on healing that part of myself that needs a certain level of security, and I am ensuring it through how I manipulate my voice, then maybe, once I've healed that part of myself, or worked on it or whatever, that eventually I'll get to a point. Oh, jeez. Oh, Jesus. That eventually I'll get to a point where I no longer need or no longer feel the need to perform in that way, right? To manipulate my voice in that way. But yeah, that's me. That's everything. Thank you for listening. And if you do have little things that you notice about yourself, that you think are remnants or relics of your childhood, then please share. I'd love to hear. Like for me, like I said, it's the voice, right? And I know exactly where that comes from and why I do it, and it makes me cringe. It really does. But we're also going to have an episode on cringing, so don't worry. But yeah, please do share. I think that everyone could benefit from finding comfort in the fact that we're all going through things, that we all have a past we're trying to heal from, and that maybe might help us have a little more compassion with each other if we know and see and understand that I am merely a part of this conversation isn't even with the person who's standing right in front of me, that part of this conversation is being had with this person's past, right? That we are not all just blank slates standing in front of each other, but I have a past. I have a history that follows me around wherever I go, and it is here, standing in this conversation, and that their past is also there, standing in that conversation, and that whatever disagreement, whatever clash might be a result of, us misinterpreting each other because of our pasts triggering each other in certain ways. And even that sudden attraction and that sudden, oh my goshness of it all, right? That too could be our past, finding, familiarity in that sort of innate story, finding comfort in seeing someone who's scarred or hurt in almost the exact same way, right? That our wounds slide into each other effortlessly, almost giving us the illusion of being whole when really all we're doing is bleeding into each other, you know? But yeah, I am so sorry for the audio. My microphone decided to disconnect at some point. I'm not sure if it was I think it was between the intro and right now. So I think I'll have it sorted now. I didn't want to lose my train of thought, so I kind of just, accepted it and said fuck it. But it will be fixed by the outro, and hopefully future episodes will have consistent sound, at least in the episode. And for consistency's sake, at least I'm still living in the same apartment. I haven't moved, I haven't gone MIA because I was relocating. I still live with my noisy ass neighbors that are always calling the police on each other and constantly have car trouble. Okay. I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope this week brings you closer to who you want to become and the life you want to live. And if not, I hope you learn many lessons on how to be better in the coming week. I will see you on Wednesday for the Agony Aunt, and we are 1 week away from our surprise episode. I know you thought I forgot. I didn't. So, just to give you a little heads up, next week we'll be talking about role play. Meow. Lol. No, not that type of role play. We'll be talking about role play in the sense of how we recreate our childhoods and what that looks like in different dynamics. That it isn't always in a romantic setting, it could be with friendships, it could be at work, it could be merely in how we interact with other people, building on what we spoke about this week, right? And down the line, we'll cover all the other things that were sort of earmarked in this week's episode. And we will also continue to build. So the structure of this series is going to be, two sort of anecdotal, so like a foundational theoretical episode, then two anecdotal episodes to follow, and then another foundational, anecdotal, anecdotal. It won't always be a 2-1-2-1 ratio, but they won't be sort of like two theoretical episodes back to back. That's basically all I'm going to say, right? But yeah, this is going to take us some time to unpack. And the reason for that is just because all sorts of trauma, especially trauma that happens at a young age, it permeates every part of our being. And it is in that sort of spreading out that it becomes almost intangible, right? And it becomes almost invisible because you find yourself in a situation where you can't really tell the forest from the trees. So yeah, we will try to unwind and untangle all of it slowly and use real life examples and situations to sort of make it a little more tangible. So yeah, we're going to hit a bit of a rough patch in terms of touching on very deep topics. But it's winter, and we're going to find ourselves having a bit of seasonal depression anyway. So why not use that mood to equip ourselves so that once springtime comes around, we'll be in tip-top shape. We might not have our beach bodies ready, but we'll definitely have a metaphysical beach body mentally, right? People can't tell us shit about shit anymore. And if anyone does decide to comment on our lack of beach body or whatever, that hopefully we'll have the mental wherewithal to respond as our present selves and to process that information as our present selves and not as wounded individuals projecting childhood trauma on a flippant statement, right? That we can see what other people say for what it is, just what that person said based on how they see things, and that other people's opinions are not facts. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Have a good week, and I really hope that you do take the time to do this week's homework and to write and subscribe and share with your friends and talk about little things. Ask your friends, especially old friends who know your backstory, who know your childhood, who know you well. Ask them how they think you recreate your childhood in your friendship dynamics, right? And look at your romantic relationships, past and present, and see, how have you made yourself replicate your caregiver, or how have you made your partner become your caregiver? Or why do you choose people who share attributes with your caregiver, even if you don't know it at the start of the relationship? By the end, the signs are all there. Whatever. Really, really think about it. Look at yourself, look at your life, not in a judgmental way, but in an inquisitive, exploratory way to understand yourself better. Journal, right? Journal your interactions with people and ask yourself certain questions. Log everything down so you can revisit it with a cooler mind. And be gracious to yourself. Always, always, always be gracious to yourself. You deserve peace. Okay, bye.